All right. All right. Welcome back to episode 29 of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conegron, and beside me here, as always, is a shell of Ben the Jet Retz. Ben, how you doing?
I'm just here.
He is just here. And before we get into the nitty gritty here, for those who are listening on audio, please check us out on YouTube and go ahead, like, subscribe, follow, give us a comment if you'd like to see our pretty faces and see how Ben is coping today. So let's get into it. The Niners couldn't do it. They lost to Kansas City in the second overtime game in NFL history. And there's probably a lot that we have to unpack here. Some wounds to open. Ben, let's set the tone. Where were you on Sunday? Watching it all. What was that? What was that for you?
Well, I went over to my parents' place with my girly, and we kicked off Super Bowl Sunday by watching the Sacramento Kings get dominated by the Thunder. So it's a great start to it. But I held hope, and I believed in this Niners team as I did all year long. And Mama Bear made some fire snacks to go along with the game, which was awesome. She made some great guacamole, something that we call poo dip, which is if anybody knows me personally and knows my family, like it's a weird name, but it's actually one of the most fire side dishes you can have. It's a cream cheese chili, like it's a whole thing.
Ooh,
It's fire, and you have it with those like Tostito scoops.
the scoop. Yeah, that's the way to
So
do it.
good. So she made some of those, and she made some barbecue shrimp, and it was like perfectly set up for like a Super Bowl Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the game happened.
And then the game happened. So let's get into it. So it looked pretty good at first, right? At least on the defensive side of the ball. So the first possession, the Niners end up taking it, and then the Niners are driving down the field. The offense looked great. The opening script looked great, and then the tone was set with that Christian McCaffrey opening fumble. How much of that do you think just kind of, what were you thinking in that moment? Did that kind of set up like oh man, this is going to be like this type of game, or did fluky CMC fumble? What was it, like his fourth of the year? Like he
Third.
just third, so it's like hasn't done it. His first Super Bowl. Like what? How are you feeling after that first turnover?
Um, I actually was so initially I was like, oh boy, like on the biggest stage, this guy who never makes a mistake like that just made this mistake. I talked about not making mistakes and not turning the ball over in the episode prior, and we open up in the first drive with that. And I was just kind of like, okay, this going to be like a sign of things to come? And then defense for the Niners just came out and they made a statement with that 3-and-out.
They looked
And
good.
they looked really good. It was like that first half, jumping the gun a little bit, was I think the best defense the Niners have played all year.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just flying around, sending 4 or 5 guys to the ball. Whoever the carrier is, whoever the receiver is, like nobody had space for the Chiefs. And it was, I mean, they were playing suffocating defense, and it was
Mm-hmm.
awesome to see. That felt great. And so from that perspective, in the first half, I was feeling really good because, yeah, I knew the Chiefs were going to bring their best defensive game, but I knew like going into this, it was going to be a battle of which defense gets the stops, gets a turnover, takes advantage from there. And unfortunately, we got the ball out of Pacheco's hands, and we couldn't do anything with it. We ended up 3-and-outing and having to punt. And so that's like one of the first missed opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I guess the very first is the missed opportunity that would have at least led to us getting a field goal, and that's Christian fumbling the ball. I believe we would have scored on that, a touchdown on that
Oh
drive.
yeah.
I mean, we were moving. And that whole first half, the Niners were moving the ball almost without without any issues. There were there were drives that came to a halt due to just a lack of um like awareness and composure, especially by Trent Williams, who is somebody you got to expect as a vet to not make those kind of mistakes. I mean, on the same drive to push us back 25 yards for holding and for false starts like that, you can't do that as a vet, especially on this kind of a stage. So definitely missed opportunities in the first half. And then, yeah, we got into halftime. I gotta say,
Okay.
the halftime show was pretty decent.
It was a
It
banger.
was
It was
it
a
was good. It was
banger.
one of the best ones in a while. Right after we finished recording last week, my girlfriend like came barging down the stairs and she was like, "You're not gonna watch the Usher show? Like you're watching this with me?" And I'm like, we'll see. Like he's cheesy, he's a cornball, blah blah blah. And she's like, "No, you're watching this with me." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, how about this? Throw together an Usher playlist for me to prove why I should be listening." And she put together in like, I kid you not, like 15, 20 minutes, she put together like a playlist, 45 minutes long.
Dude has a
And
million songs that are hits, so it's
oh,
like,
100%. And obviously there were some in there that, were cheesy, but there were others that were like, yeah, this is Usher. And it kind of threw it back for me and it made me realize like, yeah, he kind of deserves to be there. And there's a reason why he was on that stage. So that halftime show was awesome. I don't know
yeah.
what you and the fam thought of it, but
Oh no, we were all chilling and we were vibing hard in the living room. It was great. I thought that I was surprised that he came out with Caught Up to start. I was like, oh, he's digging into his bag. This is cool. I was pretty happy to see it, and I thought the features was great. Alicia Keys, that was really cool to see.
yeah.
Having Luda and Lil Jon, I knew like they were going to be featured somehow, but the fact that they did that at the end and did the whole song, I was like, okay, this is cool. I love it.
Well, and that
So
was her that came out on the guitar, right?
yeah, and her came out on the guitar
Yeah.
too. Yeah, that was also cool. She just had her little rock star moment. I was like, this is
Yeah.
this is pretty sick. So
It's cool that the last two Super Bowl shows have been like throwbacks to the early 2000s and late 90s, like
oh, for
it's kind
sure.
of like that nostalgic feel, which is pretty cool to see.
I think the only reason with like the Rihanna halftime show that like lacked a little bit of luster last year was just because she was pregnant. Like you can only do so
Right.
much as a performer when you're kind of limited in that aspect. But with Usher, he can still go out there and do choreography and have a cool set. Like he was out there dancing, even if he was doing the same five moves over and over again. But it's like it was still cool, and I like the way they
100%.
transitioned for each song. So for
And when
sure.
I guess when I was referring to the 90s, I actually go back 3 years, which was when we had like Snoop and that
Oh
whole
yeah,
like
for the
crazy
LA one,
lineup. Yeah,
that
that
was
was
cool.
sick. That was a cool one. But yeah, I mean, what were your thoughts on the first half? I just ultimately thought it was a good half of football from the Niners perspective. It looked promising.
For the Niners perspective, I think so. The whole game, I felt like defensively perfect first half, as good as you can ask for. You were flustering them. The offense couldn't get anything going. Steve Wilkes had a good idea of just getting pressure, and the Niners were just winning their matchups. And I thought it was really surprising. And I think the part of the first half that kept getting to me was the fact that missed opportunities, like you mentioned, like the fumble, they couldn't capitalize offensively, they stalled out. Trent Williams, like you mentioned, like, and we brought this up in the pregame pod. It was like CMC, Trent Williams. This is their first Super Bowls. Well, there might be veterans, but will the moment get to them? And they do make crucial mistakes in this game. CMC outside of that first fumble was tremendous. He had a great game. 160 total yards. Like he did all he could at that point. And I
Yeah.
also don't think that with that first fumble, I don't think, especially with how the Niners responded, I didn't think that it ended up being that costly. So it's just like the momentum at first, once those first two drives kind of happened, the offense kind of stalled here and there, but then they were kind of making a big play or two. And then it never seemed, once you guys got past the 50, it just never could just get just enough. And I was happy to see Jake Moody hold a record for 2 quarters. I was nervous when it was 55. I'm like, oh my gosh, if this is what it's going to come down to. But he drilled it and, made it a 10-0 lead. And I was like, or if, 3-0, and then they
Yeah.
had the touchdown after.
Mm-hmm.
Which the trick play touchdown was very good. That was a great play design. Ryan, I know you went dark. Ryan and I were commenting like this was a good aggressive move by Kyle that, not many guys have the guts to do. And, the Niners, we can talk refs all we want in this game. The Niners got away with a illegal man downfield. So I'm glad, the refs didn't insert
The
themselves
Chiefs
in
did
that
too
book
on
for
the
that.
last play of the game too.
Exactly. So it's like
Yeah.
the refs weren't inserting themselves for certain things in ways that I was kind of expecting them to. I actually, both teams matched up with 6 penalties. Um, at like early on for the Niners, it just felt like it was coming in bunches, and I was just like, man, this is killing the drives. And when it was 10-0, I was thinking to myself, it could be more. And the second it was 10-0, I was like, man, I don't have a good feeling about this at all. And the defense was playing well. I was like, you were giving Mahomes too many chances to figure this out.
Yeah.
But the first half I thought was good. Especially the fact that you guys did hold them to 3 going into half, I thought was even more important at the time. Because they were close. Like that was one of the only other drives that they were kind of driving on outside of the one that they fumbled on. And like I felt good. I was like, okay, if the offense can come out and do their thing in the third quarter and at least, find some rhythm, get a score, you're going to put them in a good spot. But first half, it was a B, and the special teams showed up for them, in terms of punt return defense, I should say, was did a really good job. Chris Conley was just wrecking the game, like, for the
Yeah.
Chiefs. Like, he was making great plays, and I was kind of hyped at first. I was like, oh, he's getting a couple stops here, and then he's just decking dudes, and I was like, wow, this is he showed up to play, so that was cool.
Yeah. I think at halftime when we were up 10-3, that was when it hit me like it wasn't a big enough lead because obviously the Chiefs were getting the ball out of halftime. Um, I was happy that we held them to 3. Don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I had a feeling they were going to come out and make it 10-10, and that's where I believed it would be a ball game, and that's why going into halftime I was upset at the Christian McCaffrey fumble and the Trent Williams penalties because I'm like, you just killed 2 drives where you guys had great field possession. One of them you were on your way to at least getting 3. So those, I had a feeling at that point were going to bite us in the butt. And ultimately, at the end of the game, they did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know where you're coming from in terms of, it didn't necessarily decide the game, but in a way it did because if you think about it, and this is all what ifs at this point, right? Because
Right, of
obviously the
course.
Chiefs are winners, Niners are losers. But if the Niners had come out and smacked the Chiefs in the face on that first drive rather than fumbling the ball with a 7-0, like who knows what would have happened?
Agreed.
Maybe
I
that
do
defense
get
would have
that.
been
Yeah.
more fired up. We get another takeaway, and then it's 14-0, and we don't look back. Like
Right.
these are the scenarios that play through your head when you're on the opposite side of the Super Bowl in any loss, right? Like
Right.
so, yeah. Coming out of halftime, I was definitely nervous, um, and we got a very crucial stop and a takeaway. Patty Mahomes threw his first pick in a bunch of games, a bunch of playoff games. I don't remember how
This
many.
is the first in 2 postseasons, so it would have been
Yeah,
8. So
eight.
or actually
So
11. Roma was saying it was 11 games or 11.
was it?
It was either 11. Yeah, it was 11 playoff games. So
Yeah. So we got first interception on him in that many games, and um, didn't really do much with it. And that was, we 3-and-outed right there,
that
and
killed me, dude.
that's unfortunately, as I talk about this second half, there's going to be a glaring issue, which is my ultimate reason why the Niners lost. So, there was one thing we looked over in the first half. Prayers to Dre Greenlaw, man.
There we
I
go.
am so heartbroken for that guy. I'm heartbroken for all these guys. Like, don't get me wrong. I am genuinely upset. There's a part of me that feels utterly crushed for some of these guys. One in particular is Dre Greenlaw, who has worked so hard his entire life, like just to get to being a player and also just kind of making his way through life. The story behind him is phenomenal. I advise anybody and everybody to go out and just kind of read up on his story and watch his little documentary about him. It's he's a great guy, but for him to tear his Achilles running out on the field, just
I
like that was to me. I'm laughing not because it's funny. I'm laughing because I have no other way to express that this is literally the Niners curse at this point. It seems like every single time the Niners get into a big game scenario, and a big game doesn't mean just the Super Bowl. Anytime they get into a game where they need to win, it is a must win. These guys play so damn hard that they get injured. Dre Greenlaw goes out. Debo goes out. George Kittle goes out. Jair Brown gets injured. Like,
Didn't Feliciano get hurt too?
Feliciano got hurt too. And and then I'm missing one more. Someone got banged up. I don't remember who.
Jair Brown at the end?
Right? Yeah, I already mentioned him. There was one other guy.
Okay, yeah.
But obviously we had a couple guys come back. But it just felt like those were the things that happened that it felt like it wasn't going to happen. Like it wasn't meant to be. Like we weren't meant to win this year again.
Yeah.
And it was just these things that were just driving me nuts. But yeah, so coming out of halftime, there's the interception. We couldn't move the ball. The Chiefs get it back. They can't really move it much. But we were forced to punt. And where the game really changed was when a really unfortunate error by, I don't remember who it was.
Are we talking about the punt?
The punt. It wasn't considered a muffed punt, but
that's just unlucky. Yeah. Unlucky.
And then, I mean, everyone's out here blaming Ray. You got to look at the play a little bit closer. Yeah. Ray actually tried to make a play that would have saved that entire situation.
So I guess in that situation where people were, I guess, frustrated with Ray, and this is such a hindsight take to have. For those who somehow didn't see it, with 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go in the third, the Niners got to stop another one, and they were the Chiefs forced to punt. They punted, the ball bounced off. I don't know his first name, but Luter Jr.'s foot. And Ray McLeod tried to pick it up with his hands. And I think where people were frustrated was you should fall on the ball is what they were saying, right? But like in that kind of moment when you're reacting in a split second, as a receiver, that's almost not like your first instinct to fall on the ball. And even though they're probably coached that way, like it is what it is. And he had it in his hands for a second there. But for that moment, that was the play where I was like, oh crap. Like
yep.
the Niners were doing a great job still setting momentum and keeping the tone. Chiefs hadn't scored a touchdown yet. Like they had done their job. And it was literally the play after that, they get Marquez Valdez-Scantling for a touchdown, wide open too. Like they weren't ready. And to reference the Dre Greenlaw stuff too, like, it was the most unfortunate thing to see him get hurt because literally right after that, the Chiefs kind of started finding a little bit of a rhythm, at least with Travis Kelce, because that dude was shut out until Greenlaw got hurt. And then his numbers slowly started coming up. And I was just like, this sucks because the Niners lost an entire dimension of their defense that was allowing them to play the way they were while they were stopping them early on. And that part, when I saw that, I was like, this sucks. So, but yeah, after that touchdown, then it was a new ball game. But I thought the Niners woke up after that because they started off the third quarter going with 3 straight 3-and-outs, and I don't even think they ran the ball with McCaffrey to start. Didn't they throw it 9 straight times or something like that?
Yeah, it was 9 straight throws.
Yeah, and at that point, the Chiefs' defensive line was winning. Like they started figuring things out. They came out aggressive. Chris Jones was game wrecking. Karlaftis was getting there, and I think the Shanahan, like, he was calling plays that were taking a little bit too long to develop, and by the time they were already there, Brock was getting suffocated. He didn't have his normal time to throw. The plays that normally generate time for Brock weren't working, and it felt like he wasn't going away from that for a little bit there in the third.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things, like we talked about going in, was the experience of the coaching staff and experience of the players. And the adjustments that the Chiefs made at halftime versus what the Niners made at halftime, I mean, it was evident that the Chiefs had a better game plan coming out of half than the Niners did. The Niners, it seemed like they were like, okay, well these things worked in the first half. Let's just keep doing it. But you don't remember how and why those things were working. Oh, they were working because you established the run game pretty early on with Christian, and then you stopped using motion as much. Like we went from using 75% motion in the first half to using 42 to start the first like three what was it, 13 or 14 minutes of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not motioning people anymore. You're not doing your normal things that have, been a recipe for winning this entire season. And it got to that point in the early fourth quarter where I was like, this is another Kyle Shanahan game. Like it's exactly the way he's always coached them. He's at this point, like, I'm going to be talking about in the offseason what I expect from Kyle Shanahan is I want him to lose me some damn games taking some risks. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I actually want to see you, Kyle, take a freaking risk on fourth and I don't know, 4 on like our own 40, or not our own 40, but rather the,
Within
whoever
field
the
goal
opponent's
range,
is
right?
40,
Yeah.
or just a little outside where you'd rather punt or you'd rather do something else. Take a damn risk. I'm so
Yeah.
tired of the game manager crap. The thing that has gotten you in the deep end every single year. You are so good at managing a game all the way up until you get to the playoffs. And then the playoffs, you're lucky to scrape by. You're lucky to scrape by with these game manager. You're lucky that Debo and Kittle and Brandon and all these guys can have these games. Now I'm looking back at last year, against Seahawks and those teams, like all these amazing games to back up your game manager, but then you get to the big game and that manager stuff doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Like, give
He
me Dan
forgot who was on his
Campbell in the
team.
Super Bowl at that point. Like, it drives me nuts. By no means, I stand what I said last week. He's not on the hot seat, in my opinion. He shouldn't be on the hot seat, in my opinion.
I
But
agree.
he needs to freaking change the way he's coaching these games because it's driving me nuts the
Yeah.
way he can
Yeah.
coach so damn well through 3.5 quarters. But when it matters for him to actually start changing some of his manager tactics, he doesn't do it.
Yes, and we're definitely gonna break down what happened at the very end in the end of regulation and overtime. And it was so disappointing. When you look at the box score, Ayuk only has 3 catches. Kittle only has 2 catches for 4 yards, and he was barely targeted through most of the game. And the argument can be made for once the offensive line started really failing, they needed George Kittle as an extra blocker, right? But like, man, it was, and then he
Yeah,
started
that
going.
extra blocker didn't work out majority of the time.
Exactly. And he started going to the run again, but it was almost a little too late. We didn't see that until overtime. It's like again, he almost forgot. Like we talked about this in the pregame. Like Christian McCaffrey, he used touched the ball 30 times. Like that was we thought that he needed to touch the ball a lot. That was a recipe to do it, but it felt like another instance where he didn't utilize him the way he should. They ran to the right a little bit too much. Not that you can run to the left every time. Like I get it, but it's just like they tried to do those handoffs where Brock's the traditional under center, Brock's running to him in the backfield, but then the ones that were actually working were those quick tosses where they
Yeah.
developed quick and they were able to get to the outside. And it was so weird because you see Kyle Shanahan's opening script, they're so creative, guys are getting open, Brandon Ayuk, Debo in the middle, and then it just seems like those plays don't, they forget what those plays were as the game moved on. And, shout out to Jawan Jennings for, being awesome and stepping up in that moment too. Had he had that, at the very end, had Brock, got that ball to him, if Chris Jones didn't blow it up because he was open, or Ayuk was open on that play too, but he threw it to Jawan and he was open. Had he got that, he would have been Super Bowl MVP. So it's just like,
Yeah.
there was Kyle definitely got outcoached, and Andy Reid and Spagnuolo, and I think that is the product of having a defensive coordinator who's been your consistent defensive coordinator for 4+ years now, and the same system can be run over and over and over again, and there's familiarity. But I thought Steve Wilkes through the first half of this game did a really, really good job, just confusing Mahomes and then just providing pressure. and not just going soft on him. But then as the game progressed, he ended up getting softer and softer coverage. He was letting Mahomes get the short stuff. And I'm like, you're just letting Mahomes go easy button, easy button, easy button the whole time. He's going to take that. So,
Yeah.
so let's get into the end here where the Niners, the Niners got the Moody kick to take the lead, right? To take the lead 19-16.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chiefs got the ball. How did you feel about just kind of the way that the Niners approached that towards the end?
I actually thought that going for the field goal, making it 19-16 was a good call.
At that
Um,
time, yeah.
yeah, I was banking on our defense understanding that we've been in this situation with this guy before, with Patrick Mahomes before, and it's time to step up and actually get the stop. And I feel like Kyle kind of set him up in a way for that success. Um, Unfortunately, they made some really good plays. The Chiefs did going down the field. They marched pretty easily, with
Yeah.
exception to a few just really good third down conversions where it felt like we might actually have this drive. Um, and then we were able to hold them to 3, which was huge.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's all these hindsight things. Like at that point,
Right.
taking the field goal, making it 19-16, feels like we should have gone for a touchdown, you know?
But it sucks in that moment too because so before we kicked the field goal to make it 19-16, there was a 3rd and 4, right? It was that crucial 3rd and 4 that had the Niners gotten it, they could have ran the ball all the way down and potentially have a Jake Moody game winner at the end of the game versus the
Mhm.
Chiefs actually getting one more chance. And the Chiefs called the timeout prior to. Spags drew up a beautiful play where McDuffie got in the way. And honestly, for Jake to kick a 53-yarder to make it 19-16 was insanely clutch. Like there
Yeah,
was, for all the, the nerves that kind of happened with it. And yes, he got blocked earlier on the field goal. And, some can argue that on the PAT when they scored the touchdown. Um, I don't know how much of a significance that makes because I still think the Chiefs, you know, if they wanted to get a touchdown in that moment, it just felt like they could have. And I think,
they would have went for 2 too, and they would have tied it up.
right. And then speaking of, we're about to get into that. So, but I agree that the best that you could hope for, I was nervous. And fortunately, the time ran out on the Chiefs because they, with 10 seconds to go, they tried to go to Kelsey in the end zone and Fred Warner made a great play, got the stop, and they were forced to kick the field goal. They didn't want to take the chance, right? They didn't have any timeouts. There was no reason to. And now the elephant in the room that has kind of been taken from this game was overtime. And I am completely victim of this. I was one of those people who were slightly unaware of the new rule changes because the rule change happened in 2021 after, of course, it was the Chiefs. That there was the Chiefs versus Bills 13-second game where each offense was going crazy. Everyone in that building knew that whoever got the ball first was going to win. And the Bills felt like that was unfair. They should have gotten a chance. So they created the new rules where both teams would possess the ball. I was unaware of this. And as a fan, that's one thing, right? And because this was my first time seeing it in action, this was the first game. This was the first time the new overtime postseason rules were in place. And the Chiefs knew about it. Obviously, the rule was made for because of them, but they were on record saying that they had been preparing for this exact scenario in overtime. But when you go to the other side, apparently Kyle Shanahan and the Niners were not prepared. They did not talk about this. They weren't. Some of the guys said they didn't even know how the overtimes rule works until they showed it on the big screen, and
Yeah,
that's tough. And the Niners win the toss. And apparently the logic with this is you want the ball second, knowing that if both teams are going to get a chance, the time doesn't even matter. So I don't even understand why they had an OT clock. Like, if both teams are just going to possess the ball, you might as well just not have a timer at that
yeah.
point.
It's
That
just
was,
for gamekeeping sake. It's weird.
yeah, that confused me too, and we'll get into that when we talk about the Chiefs portion. But the strategy behind this is to kick well, for some teams would be to kick. So then you know what to respond with. So if the other team scores a touchdown, hey, you got to get a touchdown. And if you want to be ballsy and go for the 2, then you can win the game off the 2 points. The Chiefs were like, that was the strategy we were hoping for and wanting to present. And the Niners, Kyle Shanahan came back and responded that he wanted to go first because he wanted the ball third. And again, there's a lot of context in this. We can't just say like that was a terrible decision because of this, but like the Niners had just played defense. They had just went down the whole field with Mahomes, right?
Yes.
So it's like if you're going to give up a touchdown, you might as well, give your guys a chance to rest. There's that factor. And you can believe in your offense to at least put up points and bet on your defense. That was basically what happened. You're betting on your defense because your offense can at least get 3 points. But then the other half of it is on offense when you're first, you are kind of limited to 3 downs. Unless you're in 4 down territory, then you can make those kind of decisions versus when if they score and you're the other team, it's 4 down all the time. So it's like there's all these things that come into play. And for the Niners, they did a great job. They got down the field. McCaffrey broke open and made some huge plays. And all of a sudden, Kyle Shanahan, it seemed like he broke his own mindset. It was 4th and short around in field goal range, and he went for it, and they got it. And they got the 4th down conversion. They went for it, and Ryan and I were texting. We're like, "Whoa!" Like Kyle Shanahan actually went for it on 4th down. Like that's aggressive. That's awesome. And then they're presented with a very similar situation on the 5 or the 9-yard line. They're presented with the same 4th and short, and they elect to kick the field goal. When in worst case scenario, if they miss, it's almost about the same amount of yards it would take for them to have to go and drive, right? How do you feel about their decision to kick the field goal versus attempting to go for it on 4th and short? And the worst case scenario in that spot would be you're pinning them back behind their own 10-yard line and daring them to have to go up the field. Even if it is for a field goal, you're starting them back here. Did that make you feel differently? Were you wondering why, why weren't you aggressive there? Did you think that was the right call for him to kick the field goal?
I agreed with every single thing that Kyle Shanahan, every call that he made from the start of OT, possessing the ball first, all the way up until that play. There's no way, if you really want to come out and punch the Chiefs in the face on the opening drive of overtime, then you don't take a field goal. And when you're that far down the field, knowing who the hell is on the other side of the ball, when you're that far down there and you elect for 3, you're asking to lose the game at that point. To me, that was when I knew the Niners weren't going to win that game. And I did lose my faithful. Like I lost the faithful title at that point because we've seen, not just as Niners fans, but as NFL fans, Marcos knows it as an Eagles fan. Patty Mahomes, in a game-winning situation, I don't want to give him that. I don't want to give him the chance. I don't want to give him the light of day. And what you did by electing to go for 3 after going for it on 4th down earlier in the possession, and after getting all the way down the field with all these weapons that you have drafted, traded for, built, and you settle for 3 in the biggest stage, you're asking to lose.
Can't do that. Like you can't give Mahomes the last chance. You can't. And like in theory, had they went for the touchdown, they would have still gotten the last chance, but at least it's a touchdown. And I mean, let's face it, you would have gone. They would have gone for 2. They don't care.
Yes. They said they would have.
Yeah. So it's like, but at that point, getting a touchdown, and albeit they got it, but that would have been more pressure. That's a different situation.
Yep.
They knew they could have settled for 3 and it would have been fine. I was a little disappointed. And just like you, at that moment when they didn't go for it on 4th down and they kicked the 3, I was like, that was the moment I felt like the Niners lost that game.
To me, that was Kyle genuinely saying, I don't respect who's on the other side of the ball. I don't respect the other team on the other side of the field. That is what that meant to me. Like as obviously a fan, I'm sure Kyle respects that team more now than he did, right? But just the sheer lack of understanding the fact that Patty Mahomes gets to go and do the same damn thing that he's done to every other team in the NFL, but this time on the biggest stage to go and get his third. You don't think about that? Like, I'm bothered. That's ultimately where it was missed opportunities and then it was decision making.
Yeah.
Those were the two things that bit this incredible, fighting, fun to watch Niners team in the ass to end the 2023-2024 season.
And there's a testament to the fact of you question a little bit how the team was built because you have all these weapons, but the offensive line cost that offense the game at the end. Brandon Ayuk, his man's on the ground. He's running free in the end zone on that last play. Juwan Jennings beat L'Jarius Sneed. He's running wide open. But Chris Jones is already in Brock's face. Just by the time this can happen, Chris Jones is right there to disrupt. And we'll talk about this we'll talk about him in a second because I thought Brock did a really good job given everything. But you got to help him. You got to do a little bit more than that, and you got to expect the fact that they're going to give you everything they have at the end there. They're going to dare Brock to beat them with the pressure, and they weren't prepared. They didn't think that pressure was coming by the play that they called, and it just oh boy. And on the other side, Mahomes made some incredible plays. Like I was sitting there on that drive, and I was like, God damn it, this is the best freaking dude I've ever seen. Like he's unbelievable. And coaching again, Andy Reid saves everything in his back pocket for just the Super Bowl because he knows he's going to get there. And he can throw out all the stops. Mahomes didn't have a single designed QB run all year until this game. And it came on the 4th and Super Bowl, basically, when the Niners had their chance. But, when it's that close, it's just like the Eagles run a very similar style of that play for the RPO where, the tight end's coming out. Kelsey was out there, but, it's Mahomes. Like, he was going to take it. And oh, man, and then he did the classic Mahomes things where he's just scrambling and getting those big plays, getting those big yards. And I'm just like, man, I don't know if they're going to hold him to 3. And then, of course, to win the game, to win it all, they run the same exact play that they scored 2 touchdowns on the Eagles last year. Like that crap was on film and they still ran it because Andy Reid said they can't stop it. And like we've the crappy part about like these 5 or 6 kind of decisions or unlucky moments or terrible bounces that kind of happened was the Niners were this close despite all of the negative crap that happened, right? And that's got to be the part that sucks the most, is that this probably was the best chance because this was supposed to be the Chiefs team that wasn't supposed to get it this year. This was supposed to be the Chiefs team that was having an off year, a rebuilding year because Mahomes didn't have the weapons. And yet McCole Hardman and Marquez Valdes-Scantling are out here being the ones to make the plays. And obviously Travis had a couple huge plays at the end there and broke it open, but like, if not now, that's kind of the question looking forward. If not now, then when? Like, both of our teams ran into a dynasty, and it's kind of, and both of our teams had we were a few minutes away from winning it, and yet they still ended up on top. And it sucks. It's a testament to how good they are and the flaws that were pointed out, right? I know you still are 10 toes down on Kyle.
9.
Do you think, when we'll definitely break this down in the off season, but do you think Kyle Shanahan's role in the team has to change?
No.
Okay.
He just needs to change His role doesn't need to change. He just needs to be.
Do you think that'll happen though?
It's a really good question.
That's like, and and I think the even worse part about this is all these weapons, they get a year older next year.
I
They
know.
outside the only weapon getting older that is important is Brock. But for everyone else, it's scary. Would you be more upset if the Niners did nothing this offseason to try and like I don't know how to describe it. They're always going to try and get better. But if they ran it back with this same team, with the same exact weapons, would you feel confident?
I'd feel confident to start the season, but I'd be. We were relatively healthy for the
That too.
most part this entire season. Like, by Niners' perspective, we were almost historically healthy. And it was the healthiest window that this team has seen under Kyle Shanahan. And I can't bank on health in general, not just as a Niners fan. You just can't bank on them staying fully healthy. Like, if it was a video game, run it back all day long. Turn the injuries off. Let's go. Like,
Right.
we're good. But I guess it would. God, I would feel good to start the season, but depending on utilization and how tired these guys are getting and how banged up they're getting midway through the season, like that would probably change, right? I just, I will be honest, I don't think this team is going to be back there next year. This Super Bowl loss, I think, is going to hit this core as deep as it can. And I have a feeling that in terms of running it back, it's not going to happen. I have a feeling we're going to see some trades and some adjustments in terms of how to build this team. Obviously, the O-line is an issue. We need to work on our secondary. There's a part of me, dude, that thinks Kyle actually has too many weapons. And it's one thing that I'll touch up on, as the offseason progresses and we start to kind of evaluate our teams and the moves that they're making. But there's a part of me that thinks Kyle he plays the game manager role as much as he does because he has as many weapons as he does, and he banks on them too much. He's like, okay, we can settle for a field goal here because we can come back and go and do X, Y, or Z another time. Whereas, let's just throw it out there. What if you just had Christian McCaffrey, Brock, and Brandon? You took everybody else out of the picture. You know you have three guys, and you're in just a regular season game, but it's a regular season game you want to win, and it's 4th and 3 with, 5 minutes left. A scenario where Kyle would probably punt the ball. He might go for it then, as crazy as that sounds, just because he's like, I can't bank on us being in a better position to win than now in this game. And so it's kind of situations like that make me think, what if he just has too many weapons that he just feels a little too confident managing the game, whereas if he doesn't, he just takes those shots.
Right.
I'd be curious to see.
Oh, and a lot of what happens for the Niners' future is going to depend on Brock, to say the least. And maybe we start getting into who we thought really stepped up. I thought Brock did great. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think the moment was too big for him at all. I think that he played clean, right? He only had the one kind of yikes play that could have been interception, but I mean that was it. Other than that, he did a really good job. He tried to scramble to avoid pressures, and
If they would have scored a touchdown in overtime and the Chiefs, let's just say, went down, scored a touchdown and a 2-point, Brock would have still been the better quarterback in this game. That's the annoying part.
mm-hmm.
Like, Brock was limited. As crazy as as it is to say, having thrown the ball 38 times, he was limited towards the end of the game in terms of what he could do, and that's thanks to the play calling. Like,
and the O-line.
Spagnoli just completely figured out that offense by
It
the
was
end of the
crazy
game.
to see. It was crazy to
And
see.
that's what happens when you start limiting yourself like Kyle does. You start managing the game, you're so predictable at that point.
He coached scared at the end. He coached like, and we talked about it. He coached like he knew Patrick was on the other side, and he just didn't. He'd rather play it safe, and that's the biggest mistake teams make against good quarterbacks, great quarterbacks. Is you're afraid to. You want to take anything that you can get in hopes that, oh, maybe this will be enough. When in reality, it won't be enough, and you just need to go balls to the wall. Like, you
Right.
need to just put it all. It's the Super Bowl. Lay it all on the line. What do you have to lose? You're not losing seeding. You're losing the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And I think the narrative around, especially that 4th and 3 at the end, or that 4th and short at the end, at the beginning of overtime, I think more people would have been okay for him going for it, and not and they knew that, because analytics be damned, that was the right decision. It was to go for
It
it,
was.
not to kick the field goal. You don't like. It sucks. It really sucks, because Kyle, when he responded after the game, he said that he was completely okay with every decision he made. He said that that was the plan, was to get the ball third. And like, so he,
I believe it.
like you mentioned, he was already conceding at that point. You're giving that implies that you're gonna give Mahomes a chance, because you believe that you can beat Mahomes. And
So why'd you give him a chance to win without even trying to go for two?
exactly.
That's the shit that just drives me nuts with this team, man.
So it's just like, oh, so we got the McCaffrey fumble, the Trent Williams drive killer. You got the holding call at the end of regulation to pin the Niners back when they were driving. You have the muffed, or the unlucky punt. You have the bad play calling at the end, the bad decision makings, and then the overtime. All of this compiled, and plus the injuries, of course. All of this compiled, and it was only a 3-point loss. And it's just like, every bounce went right for the Chiefs. Like, there were 7 balls that were like, fumbled or bobbled out, that hit the ground when it was like a live ball, and 6 out of those 7 went to the Chiefs.
I kept saying out loud to my family, like, we're not getting any 50-50 balls, and that bugs me.
Yeah.
Because those are the games, like, you just, if luck isn't on your side at all, it doesn't matter how much skill is. If there's
Yeah.
a lot more luck on the other side, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Exactly. That's one of our favorite quotes. But it sucks. And
I'm hurt, Marcos.
I know you are. And we alluded to this via text. Like, I tried to console you, and you were like, "F off, dude," because you won at one point.
Yeah.
You have the Niners. Okay, this is gonna suck. This is this is gonna suck for you.
Yeah, it is.
Are we putting the Niners now? Is there any room for the Niners to kind of defend themselves in a way that, like, yes, they made it to the NFC Championship. Yes, they made it to the Super Bowl. Are they any different than teams like the Cowboys, who haven't won it yet? Do you see where I'm getting at there?
I
guys,
absolutely do.
Like, if somebody were to go up to you now and say, "LOL, choke job," like, Niners, they can't win it.
Yeah.
Can you defend yourself, like, at this point?
This has been the thing that's bugged me the most, on top of just the loss in and of itself, and that's that the Niners are the Cowboys who can just make it a game or two farther. And that's foul. Because when the league talks about America's team, we talk about a team who can never get it done, and it's nothing but a freaking laughing stock. You're just like, they're the best. There could be one of the best regular season teams any given year, any given Sunday.
Yeah.
But come the playoffs, we all know what's going to happen to them. And holy crap, to think that the Niners are now in that same damn position bugs the hell out of me. I mean, we're talking Niners and Cowboys fans holding hands, skipping down the street, knowing damn well that our teams are never going to freaking win another Super Bowl. We're stuck where we're at right now, and it's awful. This loss, I told you and I told Ryan, I told my family, like, this is the most painful loss that I have ever experienced from a sports standpoint. Like, to be this close again to a Super Bowl against the same team, but even closer this time. I know we didn't have that lead that we did in the fourth, but this one felt so much closer. To have the kind of season that you had, the opportunities that you had, knowing where you're at with this window. In 2019, you knew the window was open, wide open. You could probably open another window down the road. Like, that's how open it was. They were so young.
Yeah.
These guys are old, getting older now. And you've got Christian McCaffrey, who's already over the average for a running back age. And he's already had a rebuilt knee. Like,
Yeah.
I want so desperately, and I will hold faith that they'll be back there. But it's so hard to see an avenue where it all goes right again like that
Yeah.
with this team. Like, I'm not asking for them to blow it up, but it almost feels like you got to, right? Like,
Got to do
it's
something at least.
right.
Like
And they're
something.
in no world are they going to blow it up.
Mhm.
Like, that would be completely brain dead, but it's that feeling of what the hell do we do right now?
Like,
And
do we
obviously
move? Yeah.
it's fresh. It's fresh as hell. I mean, 2 days ago they lost. I'm on this freaking podcast where we should be on a Thursday, but I can't make a Thursday, so I'm sitting here crying on a Tuesday.
This is good
And
content. You're more emotional now. This is good. I want the rawness.
It's raw, man, and it hurts. It genuinely does. Like, it hurts more than Game 7 of the Kings and Warriors last year. Like, and that one hurt.
That did hurt.
But guess what, Marcos? Our window for the Beam team is a lot more wide open. It's like 2019.
Yeah.
For the Niners. That's what the Kings are right now. Like, we're in the twilight for the Niners. This sucks.
And again, your future goes on Brock, and the question will be, Kittle's contract's restructured, so good there. Do we make a move for Debo? Do one of these defensive players, do we make a move with them? Like, something needs to change. And otherwise, I don't, because the same problems over the past 5 years, the same problems have kept coming. And you've knocked at the door twice. You've been there. And they can't get it done. And it sucks. Like, I feel for you. We are in different positions, though. Because, like, and I'm nervous for you next year. Because I thought the world of the Eagles coming into the season. But like we've mentioned plenty of times, unless you're the freaking Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to make it. It's hard to say you've played all the way through February and then to come back and say we're going to play through February again after suffering the kind of loss that you had. The emotional toll, all it might take next year is one tough loss, and all of a sudden the rails could just come off. Like, next year it could be a loss to the Cowboys. It could be a loss to the Chiefs again. Like, and it could just, all of a sudden the team just falls apart. And we don't know, because it's exactly what happened to the Eagles. And
yes.
But the Niners, man, like, this felt like the biggest one that got away, like, in recent history, with like how good this roster was.
Recent NFL history?
Yeah. Because like this was like the most prolific offensive roster since the, greatest show on turf Rams. You're going up. This is probably the easiest the NFC is going to be now for the next few years, because the Packers are going to get better, Lions are going to get better, hopefully the Eagles get better, Cowboys are always going to be there. Like, teams are, and there's going to be teams that come up that we don't even know yet. Like, this feels like, and the Niners, for all intents and purposes, are favored to win the Super Bowl next year somehow. I don't understand why it's not the Chiefs, but this team is still good enough. It's just a matter of, what will this loss do to them? What will going there again do to them? For younger guys like Brock and them, it won't affect them as much. But for these guys like Kittle, Warner, Debo, Ayuk, the ones who have been there, like, what is that going to do? And that's going to be the biggest question. And we'll see how the Niners respond in the offseason. I don't even know what's gonna happen. Like this is gonna be a crappy offseason for the Niners because the narrative is gonna be, can Kyle Shanahan win a Super Bowl, and that's
Yep.
it. Last year was, oh, can Brock be a quarterback? At least that's gonna shut up a little bit, and at least now that Brock has his first full year under his belt, next year will be the big year for, are we gonna pay him $50 million or not? And that'll be a different conversation, but it doesn't have to happen now. But now it's going to be, what's next, and can Kyle Shanahan get this done? So,
Got to get Brandon Ayuk a contract. That's for sure.
for sure,
If
I
we
think
lose him, I'm done with the pod. I'm just gonna let you know right now.
he's your boy. I know that would be tough. Like, that would be tough. And I don't see why they don't. He's just too good not to have, and he's such a good schematic piece that you can pair him with anybody. And
Yeah.
if you don't pay him, someone's going to. He would be, and outside of, Jefferson's available, but the Vikings will probably re-sign him. It's just like, when you have a player that's that good, when you have a top 5 receiver, you pay him. And it will work out. Him and Brock work. They've proven to work. So
they've proven to work a little bit better than him and Debo. I might have something for that down the road.
Exactly. And
hint, hint.
Yeah, hint, hint. So, any final thoughts? I think that's enough torture for you. Any final thoughts on the game or the Niners, or any shout outs you want to give? This was our last post game pod of the year for the Niners, so in general for the NFL. So
yeah, 2 shout outs. Shout out Brock Purdy. That boy, love it, man. All year long I was singing his praises and just trying to argue as best I can for why he's as good of a quarterback as he is. At times I was a lot more exaggerated than I needed to be, but I was trying to prove a point. And that was that this kid needs to be appreciated and celebrated more than he is. And for him to go out on the Super Bowl stage in front of the largest TV audience ever, and for him to just prove why he's where he is, why he's QB1 when he was taken last pick overall, and why Kyle Shanahan believed in him over the other 2 guys ahead of him just a year and a half, 2 years ago. Like, I'm thrilled that he's going to be our quarterback moving forward. I'm excited for the future with him. Do I think he's like the best quarterback of all time or the best quarterback even in today's game? No. But I do believe he's a quarterback that can actually get us a Super Bowl because he was so damn close, and it really did come down to Kyle Shanahan. I think Kyle held Purdy back on at least the last drive of the game. I would have trusted Brock with the ball in his hand.
Yeah,
So, not going back towards it. My second one is Christian McCaffrey. That was so exciting this season, watching Christian pop off and just have as dominating of a season as he did. He's my MVP. I hate that it is as quarterback driven of a league as it is. Like, that MVP award, they hardly ever give it to anybody other than a quarterback. And if there was ever a year in most recent history that proved to be the year that they should give it to anybody other than a quarterback, it was this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Christian, I'm so stoked that you're a Niner. Wishing nothing but great offseason health. Come back, Niner gang. Let's jump back on this quest for stakes.
It restarts next year. I
know. Let's go Kings.
Yes, let's go Kings. But for me, as a football nerd, that was a hell of a game. I enjoyed every second of it. To get an OT was really cool. For the way, for things to happen the way they did, disappointing ultimately. But I my heart hurts for you and Ryan and everyone here that supports the Niners and loves the Niners, and feels like this was a missed opportunity. And, I don't believe this team's done, but, there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of soul searching. And, it's going to be a wild ride. And hopefully they can bounce back from this and make things, competitive and still be right up there with the Eagles next year. So, yeah. So yes, let's go Kings. From here on out, it's gonna mainly be Kings. We'll talk off season stuff because news will come out. If any big news comes out, like the Eagles, Hassan Reddick said that there was a trade thing, but he shut that down. So I'm not even gonna go into that. So things of that nature will come out. And who knows if there's movement for Niners coaches? We'll get into that. Who knows if Steve Wilkes is coming back? This will be an interesting topic too.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens out of both of our camps in the next couple of weeks. But it's time to transition. The All-Star break comes to, it's coming here this week or this next upcoming
Weekend.
week. Yeah, so the Kings
Yeah.
are playing right now. It's at Phoenix, right?
Correct.
And then we play Denver tomorrow.
Denver tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to dust us because now it's a back-to-back, so they're going to be fine. But after that, our guys get rest, and then the real season begins. Now, trade deadlines are over. There was a lot of movement. We'll go over some of the trade deadline moves that we think might, help certain teams, and we'll start looking really deep in the playoff picture because we are right in the thick of it, and a lot of things can happen if we don't pick our crap up because we're teetering right now, bro. This one would be huge.
We are teetering. This would be big. I did have a take that I kind of told Marcos and Ryan on a text message, and I'll just give it one little glance over before we go here.
Okay.
And that's that I believe that this Kings team was actually suffering from these trade talks that were going on all season long. There was such a beautiful chemistry between this team, between all these guys at the end of last year. And obviously we added a few guys to our roster and a couple went. But having that core together was huge. But the fact that there were even trade rumors around, not that it was even like official, but Keegan and Malik, like the fact they were ever at one point discussed, and just hearing names, Kevin Herter and
HB,
guys along those lines, like hearing those names and hearing your name in a trade talk when you love this team and you love what is going on in the environment, like I'm sure it gets to these guys. So being over the hump of the trade deadline, I actually believe that this team is going to get a lot better very quickly, and it could be right after we come out of the All-Star break. We'll assess what that looks like, what the back half of I guess the back quarter of the season looks like in terms of matchups. But we'll see. I mean, we're sitting in, I think, 7th right now, but we're like right there.
Right, and if we lose tonight, we'll probably be 8th. But we're within. So like the way the West is set up, just a quick top 4 in a league of their own right now. They're a few games ahead, and then 5th through 8th is up for grabs within like a half a game. So it's and it's between the Kings, the Pelicans, the Suns, and the Mavs, and then the Warriors are probably going to do this thing now with Draymond. Now that he's back, they'll probably bump up to 10, and then it'll be the Lakers and the Warriors, and that'll be fun. And I hope we can avoid the play-in, but we'll talk about that going in. But I do agree with Ben's take that I didn't even think about it, but the trade deadline, now that that's over, it'll probably help these guys moving forward, knowing that these are the guys they're going to war with, and we can get over that hump. And I'm also under the impression that the All-Star break is going to be a huge help for these guys. Get the rest that they need. They don't make it. The only guy that's going is Keegan. That's fine. The stars can rest. Domas, has been insane, picking up triple doubles left and right. So, good for that. Foxy looks like he needs some rest just to kind of just reset, get things back in order. So, I am looking forward to it. Hopefully we can pull off at least one of these 2 games. That would be huge, but we'll see. But we'll definitely get more in depth with that next week for sure.
Yes, sir.
All right. So with that being said, this was episode 29 of the Behind the Back podcast. Ben, I'm proud of you for getting through this. I know it was tough. Like, last year we didn't have the pod last year, so I couldn't, vent in this aspect too. So I'm proud of you for, how you've handled this. I'm sure you're going to be coping for a few weeks here.
Months.
talking about like, man, had this happened, we're getting this would happen.
Yeah, don't get me
But
started.
yeah, so you guys can hit us up at behindthebackpod13 at gmail.com. You can hit us up on any of our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, X, Facebook. Find us on YouTube. Leave us a like or subscribe and comment any takes that you may have had from the game, or maybe not for Ben's health, maybe not. But, we are so thankful for getting through our first NFL season. Obviously, it didn't end for either one of us the way that we had hoped, that we were banking that one of these two teams would have come away victorious. But the Chiefs are going to chief, and that's just annoying as heck. But
yeah, and one last thing too, for anybody who is potentially a Chiefs fan listening, congratulations, enjoy it.
congratulations, yes.
You have an absolute dynasty, but enjoy it while it lasts because our teams are coming.
Yes, we will knock off Mahomes at least once. We're calling it
Yes.
here. So we will talk to you guys next week. It's going to be basketball. We can just purge our minds of football for a little bit. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you later.
Peace.